Tonka Shilai, Tonka Shilai, Namacho.
Tonka Shilai,
Tonka Shilai, Namacho. Namacho. Oshia Che Chielo, Namacho. Namacho. Namacho, Oshia Che Chielo, Namacho, Namacho,
Tonka Shilai, Tonka Shilai, Namacho.
Tonka Shilai, Tonka Shilai, Namacho. Namacho, Oshia Che Chielo, Namacho, 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 Oshia Che Chielo, Namacho. Namacho.
There it is. Yes, thank you for that beautiful, beautiful singing. Thank you for logging on, Tarina Ross. That, as you know, was Butch Eastman, sometimes known as Butchie Eastman, and just from reading that, the text on the song there on the video, looks like that was composed by Santee Witt. And I just want to thank, our artists, the keepers of our songs, the keepers of our dance. This smudge is like deciding to come right onto the camera. I try to put it over there, kind of a little bit out of the way, but it's coming right within view shed. That's just how it goes sometimes. Anyhow, thank you for logging on, Lila Daya Yahipilo. As you know, this is Chase Iron Eyes, and I'm very grateful to be able to be with you tonight. As you can see, I am not in our studio, but that's okay. I've been able to be stationary a little bit, so it's much easier to accomplish a weekly podcast when you're able to stay in one place. And the other places that I was at, of course, was at Line 3. And it just seems like, the days just kind of go by really quickly. And it's hard to keep track of whether it's Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, or what day of the month it is. All I know is that people are struggling. People are on the front line. People are in the camp. People are encouraged by the recent visit of the squad, which I covered last week in Cut to the Chase number 28. This week, of course, is Cut to the Chase number 29. And we're very, we're honored to do this on behalf of ourselves, on behalf of those movements that we've given ourselves to. Starting with Mini Wichoni, and then, before that, it was for me, it was the Occupy movement and the movement to decolonize and deconstruct the racial and class oppression that is obscenely apparent in this country, and that is actually baked into the fabric of this country. But every now and again, it comes up, or as indigenous nations, we're forced to confront those aspects of colonial imposition into our lives, into our very, very real lives. And you know, on Cut to the Chase, we're able to, when we first started this, what I wanted to do was be able to go in depth on a host of issues that I feel, you know, I would have something to offer. Indigenous voices have something to offer. And we're beginning to see a very welcome uptick in recognition, in access to mainstream channels. We're for Indigenous storytelling. It is, you know, we still don't have the money in our coffers, in our pockets. We still got to connect with somebody that has the money. But the people that have the money are no longer interested in having creative control of that narrative, and having to dictate, you know, the different motifs, the different tropes that we're used to seeing in Hollywood or in our educational institutions. You know, just as an example, they're always casting some white savior who comes to save the day, or you only get to access Indigenous stories through the lens of European American or white people's participation in those spaces, in our spaces. And so that's changing. That's obviously, you know, with the advent of the digital age, we're able to change a lot of that on our own terms, but not on scales that you can get when you access mainstream capital and mainstream channels, mainstream media. That is just kind of the nature of the beast right now. And we record this show live so that anybody who is out there, anybody who's tuning in, anybody who lets us know where you're at, where you're watching from, all of that, you know, we definitely appreciate this aspect of the show, that it's live recorded, because as you know, and as you hopefully are subscribed to our podcast at Cut to the Chase on anchor.fm. Cut to the Chase, you know, it's all hyphenated, but if you just search Cut to the Chase Iron Eyes, you'll be able to find it there. And so thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for sharing the stream. Every Wednesday we will attempt to go live, and if we can't, you know, we'll certainly let you know that. But let me start with the rundown or the lineup for tonight's show, because there's some great things that I want to talk about, and I appreciate you being here for that. So first, you know, the internet, and I don't really watch the news, and so the internet, as I know it, and social media, it's going wild over Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wearing a dress that says "tax the rich" on it, and she wore it to the Met Gala. Maybe it's gala, I don't know. Like, I didn't come from within those classes that knows how to pronounce that word. But we're going to talk about it on tonight's episode, because it's gotten some strange reactions from the places that I'm kind of tuned into, and it's worthy of speaking about in an in-depth manner. So we'll do that right off the bat, and we'll get into how much it costs, we'll get into who was there and everything else. But after we speak on that, I do want to highlight something that is happening at Line 3. And as you know, yes, it's a very challenging time to be alive. We've got Line 3 staring at us, confronting us, attempting to push us over the line, as far as climate collapse is concerned, as far as carbon emissions are concerned. I mean, line 3 is it's a tar sands nightmare for everyone, and it's hard to stay in the fight. But there's a clever strategy at work coming from the White Earth Tribal Nation, and featuring, led by, involved, and relating to a guy named Frank Bebo, who I didn't get a chance to meet him or to chat with him, but he was on the ground when the squad, of course, that is Ilhan Omar, Corey Bush, Ayanna Presley, Rashida Tlaib, they were all on Lake Bemidji. And so Frank Bebo was there. He was able to speak a bit, and now there's been a lawsuit filed. So we'll give you a little bit of some more words on that. And then after line 3, we'll direct your attention to a podcast that is ran by or featuring a woman named Rebecca Nagel. You should find her on Twitter. You should find This Land podcast on Crooked Media. And I was able to listen to some of the episodes today. I've been extremely busy as well. That's why I don't have time to go to the studio and do the things that we're accustomed to, with the microphone and with everything else that kind of adds to the decor and gives you a better sound, just gives you a better experience. But we're gonna go with what we got, and it's the substance for me. Even though I know form is important, I want to direct you to this Land podcast. It's extremely informative, and it's focusing just on ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act, focusing on how these different forces are contriving, not just to destroy ICWA, but to undermine indigenous nations' right to exist. And then to kind of close things off, I want to speak on the this would be the 20th memorial of 9/11. I believe it's 20, or is it 19? Anyhow, 9/11 is one of those recurring in memoriam issues and events that shocked this country. And then when social media kind of took hold in our world, in the indigenous perspective, we begin to contrast America's remembering America's mourning process with respect to 9/11. We begin to juxtapose that with how America tells indigenous nations or the descendants of slaves to get over it and to move on. That is in the past, and never had we seen America start to use hashtags like never forget. And some would call that weaponizing human grief, but such is the experience of indigenous nations. It is that we've been downtrodden to this day, and so when we get an opportunity to kind of highlight the difference in experiences, we're gonna take that opportunity. So I'm very quick to forgive those who draw those kinds of comparisons. We will get we got word that Kanehus Manuel was arrested. So if you could go to Tiny House Warriors, that is where you will find information related to the struggle for Secwepemc self-determination, and that features as a way to highlight personalities, Kanehus Manuel and Mayuk Manuel, who are of course the daughters of Arthur Manuel. And for all of our listeners, Art Manuel is the guy who said, with respect to colonizer indigenous relations, is that you cannot cry on the shoulder of the guy who stole your land, which is a very poignant and pithy statement. But his daughters, one of them now, I catch some of their live feeds, and that's what this show is for. That this medium of communication is to share each other's struggles, to highlight these struggles, things that should make it onto the mainstream, but for obvious reasons, because of who we're standing up against, some of these perspectives will never make it on the mainstream. Standing Rock, the mainstream couldn't deny, because there was tens of thousands of people coming to Standing Rock. Line 3 is a bit different in that there are 5 separate camps, and the mainstream, outside of, I wouldn't consider Democracy Now! Mainstream, just like I wouldn't consider Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to be rich. She makes $175,000 a year. Yeah, when you come up from the trenches and you're still kind of in them trenches, that's a lot of money, but that is not rich. $1 million a year is not rich. So we should just get into that right now, because that's the first item of discussion for tonight. And if I get to talking about something else, I don't know if I'll be able to make it back to what is, it's rich to a lot of people, but it is not rich to Jeff Bezos. It's not rich to Elon Musk. It's not rich to Bill Gates. It's not rich to the people who actually determine our economic and political reality. So it is okay to criticize what has transpired with Ocasio-Cortez going to an event that is $35,000 per head to get into, and using that opportunity. It's okay to say, look, this looks a lot like co-opting the movement. This looks a lot like stealing the symbological power of art, of the wearing of costumes, or finery, garment finery at these sort of events. And I'm not a big fan of these sort of spectacle of celebrity events, but I recognize the need for somebody like AOC, somebody like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or somebody like Ilhan Omar, or anybody from the squad, somebody from within the proclaimed, or I would think the well-intentioned progressive circles within the democratic machine. That is a place that you have to be represented. When AOC did it, we had nothing but criticism, calling her a class traitor, saying that she's co-opting the movement, that she's doing nothing but performative liberalism, that she's being hypocritical. How can she proclaim to tax the rich when she's one of the rich? But I guess that is a matter of perspective that you're going to have to consider. What is rich? To me, $1 million a year isn't rich, because of my experiences in the political world, in the world of the philanthropic industrial complex. I know what it's like to subsist off of the crumbs of elitist circles. I know what it's like to be on the periphery of mainstream access. I know what it's like to not be able to enter those spheres on my time and on my terms. So those experiences, including my travel, has led me to the conclusion that $1 million a year, yeah, that's extremely rich for me. That's extremely rich for anybody in the working class. It's unimaginably, quote unquote, rich. But for people who come from money, people who come from wealth, institutional wealth, intergenerational wealth, slave owning wealth, currency owning wealth, 400 years of lending to both sides of any war type of wealth, big corporation wealth, AOC is like a peasant. So I want to congratulate and applaud what she did. And if that makes her a peasant, I don't know what that makes me. I don't know what that makes us. But in my eyes, she's certainly not rich. And I just got to say this while we're on this topic, because this is a form of, in my eyes, internalized oppression of the working class caste. The people who were not born into wealth, or who were not born into capital or property ownership. We want justice. We want what's right. We want what's fair. And when we see somebody that looks like us, and, rightfully, we have a right to criticize, we have a right to judge, because she was elected on the expressions of those progressive ideals. So everybody who considers themselves left of Nancy Pelosi or left of Barack Obama and Citigroup and AIG and Lehman Brothers and any host of, the big financial or big pharmaceutical institutions in this country is going to want to criticize what AOC is doing, because much like indigenous peoples, the left, the true left of spectrum type progressives, the social democrats, the democratic socialists, avowed communists, whatever you want to label yourself, you have been starved of recognition, power, attention, and authority, just like indigenous nations. So when you see one of your own making these kind of moves inside of these elitist circles, it feels a bit like, hold up, what's really going on there? What are you doing there? We automatically assign to ourselves this right to judge what kind of moves AOC is making. Even though we might not know anything about her congressional record, we might not know that she was at Standing Rock, we might not know that she named Crystal Tubles and Matt Remley by name for their divestment work, even though AOC shows up time after time after time after time as one of the only progressive voices inside the Democratic machine. We are still very, very quick to judge her because she comes from the world that we come from. And the world that we come from hurts. It hurts to know that there is working class oppression and racial subjugation. And I'll tell you that, we flipped the different side of our coin when Quanah Chasing Horse showed up at the very same gala, or is it gala? I don't know if it's gala or gala, but Quanah Chasing Horse, a young 19-year-old, I believe she's Gwich'in and Lakota, showed up at the Met Gala. It looks to be at the behest of Vogue or the designer that she's wearing some kind of very expensive dress that none of us can afford. But there's no judgment towards Kwana because, you know, indigenous nations are just now beginning to be recognized. We've been starved for recognition so long. We've been starved for power so long, and attention and authority, that when we just slip through the cracks a little bit and it appears that we're doing something that's worth celebrating on the mainstream stage, we forgive everything. And we should celebrate. We should celebrate Kwana Chasing Horse getting to the Met Gala or Gala, whatever it is. We should also celebrate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for going to that same gala and representing. But yes, it's completely reasonable to go further left and say, what sort of life values are you promoting by going to the Met Gala in the first place amongst fully capitalized, fully elitist people who what use are celebrities outside of this dress-up game that is going on? This art and this expression. I get it. You know, I'm being facetious when I call it a dress-up game, because there was a tweet by a guy named Dan Sheehan who said, you know, every year people go to the Met Gala, and every year a bunch of celebrities go to the Met Gala dressed as wind chimes or whatever, and we all tweet incredible while we try to figure out how to get health insurance. And by the way, that's not our Danny Sheehan, Daniel P. Sheehan, who is chief counsel at Lakota Law and at Romero Institute. That's not our guy. Even though we love that tweet. I'm just trying to catch up on some of you guys' comments. Thank you for joining the stream. Thank you for listening in. Thank you for subscribing to our podcast. Right now, we're discussing AOC because I see a lot of everybody takes their opportunity, right? Because AOC is claiming progressive, leftist values, whatever. Everybody in their dog shows up and say, "No, AOC should have done this. This is the path we need to take to destroy capitalism." This is the path. We're like Monday morning quarterbacks, and you know, we've got to think about who we are attacking, because you know, we got to have that same energy, just like when Kwana Chasing Horse shows up to the Met Gala. We want to celebrate that, and that's okay. And I don't think that all of the I'm on AOC's side. Everybody who claims to be some leftist is we're like hyper critical. I found this out when I joined the Movement for a People's Party. There's not a correct move that we can do, because all alongside of us is everybody lined up waiting to criticize, waiting to tear you down, waiting to tell you that you're not as woke as you think you are. Because of this, because of that, because of whatever. Everybody is waiting on the sidelines with their best criticisms. Just waiting for that moment when somebody else steps out into the front and makes himself vulnerable, and they're there to say, this is how they should have done it. This is how it comports with my understanding of leftism or my understanding of woke culture. Everybody is just is apprehensive, and the real rich. The real rich who kind of behind the scenes are sponsoring the ideas and the conceptuations, the capital of certain think tanks. of the racist radical fringe in this country, they are sitting back because just like the pedagogy of the oppressed, you are now doing the oppression to yourselves. Indians, native people know about this. We know what lateral oppression is. The working class people of this country are now finding out what that is. And I want to just tell it like I see it. I might be wrong. You might have some perspective, some insight that I'm missing. I'm not the guru. I don't know everything. Like, I'm barely keeping up with my workload, let alone having the time to kind of look and see what's happening in the world. But I could not ignore this one. It was coming out, loud and clear. It's a lot of crossfire, a lot of lateral violence against people who I know have our back. Speaking as an indigenous person, I know AOC has our back. I know that. But she's always going to be the first to get criticized because she's gained traction. And yes, it's possible that people that gain that kind of traction and go into that block, whether it doesn't matter what political team you're playing for, that you're going to get subsumed by those corporate, extractive, financial, too big to fail values and requirements of being in that office. That is a possibility. But I don't see that with AOC, and I think we're too hypercritical, and everyone that claims to be these leftists, where you go to line 3, you know what I mean? Go to some of these frontline actions, and if you did, great, kudos to you. You know what I mean? Like, that's awesome. But find a way. What are you doing? What are you doing to fulfill those kinds of actions and those kinds of demands on people like AOC? I just don't get it. It's just like the criticism of Sean King. He gets out there, he starts making this progress. Maybe it's I don't know. He starts making these waves, and all of a sudden everybody's attacking him, accusing him of stealing money, all this other stuff. Anyhow, it's lateral violence, and I just wanted to talk about it because you know what? Not only tax the rich, but imprison the rich. When the rich poison the river, put them in prison. To revoke their corporate charters. These guys are trying to fly around in private spacecraft while the rest of us are over here slaving away. Every day. We've got to navigate their system to feed ourselves, to clothe ourselves, to live a life of dignity. And thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for sharing this stream. For some of you, this might be the first time you heard this stream, heard Cut to the Chase. Question from CJ Bagley. Do you really think there's a political solution? Yeah. Well, here, to ask that question, do I really think, it's like asking me, do I really think life's worth living? Given the fact that big oil and big finance have all the power and they control the government, and they shove DAPL down our throats. Do I really think there's a political solution? I think there's no aspect of our lives that is not political. I think that asking if there's a political solution is the wrong way to start that journey, because that puts us, those who are ready to give ourselves to that effort, it puts us in a defensive, responsive mode. That's literally like asking me, is it worth living? Is it worth living today? Is it worth the effort to try to change people's consciousness? Is that worth it today? We cannot imprison ourselves in their framing of the dynamic. That dynamic assumes that they have power, that they maybe are confining us to that arena, and For me, politics is the front line. Politics is voting. Politics is going to lobby your congressionals. Politics is eating dinner with your loved ones every night. Politics is waking up in the morning and finding a way to say thank you for this day. You know, one of our grandfathers, Tecumseh, said this a long time ago. Find a way to give thanks for the light of the day, for your sacred breath. Find a way to give thanks for the joy of living. If we cannot find a way to be thankful, then that fault lies only in ourselves. That's the wisdom of our people, of the people of Turtle Island. So I just happened to look up and saw that question. I don't even ask myself that question. I'm designed not to ask that kind of question. We have to take courage. You know, one of our songs has the words in it. Ina ate malakota iapcha blihi michi Elohai. My mom and dad told me that I'm indigenous. So I take courage. This is a place that we have to find courage, because there are people out there right now who don't have the space, don't have the privilege to ask themselves if their effort is worth it. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's an uphill battle, but we were born into this. And we were born for it. So, you know, your mom and dad, the Mother Earth and the Sun, told you that you are a human being. This is why we take courage. That's the substance of that ancient knowledge that I was fortunate enough to learn. So, you know, we could spend some more time on lateral violence, lateral oppression. I saw that a little bit in the critique of Ocasio-Cortez. I'm not saying that she is beyond reproach, that she is beyond critique, because any leader, any politician, anybody who's entering the arena, who's willing to put their spirit, mind, body, and essence at work for those tenets, for the things that we know she believes in them because we see her talk about them. I just caught a little bit of people were sipping a little bit of haterade and kind of using it a little bit too much there. You know what I mean? It's like asking when people protest, how did you get here? Did you use oil to get here? You know what? We didn't invent capitalism or the logic of capital, but we have a duty to invade those spaces, try to co-opt those spaces. All of it to me is useful. So anyhow, I know I took up a lot of time on that, but I wanted to spend some time on that. And there's other critiques that are out there, like tax the rich assumes that there should be a rich. I don't know. All I'm saying is, like, we have to take it baby step after baby step. Anything that pushes us in the direction of liberation, of justice and equality, we should give that space to grow. Who knows how consequential the actual wearing of the dress was? Who knows how consequential having Quanah Chasing Horse there was? My thought is that those are extremely consequential because of the visibility and because of the spiritual impact of our art form, which is symbological, which is archetypal, which is communicated in what we do, where we go, what we wear, how we dress, whether we're adorned with certain, feathers or elements from our other relatives, other planetary relatives. This is why we adorn ourselves in that manner as indigenous people. So anyhow, I'm going to gather myself out of that because I just want to go deeper and deeper into it. But I want to update you about, let's move on from that. We will, no doubt, that's what I'm saying. Like, these deserve their own podcast series, like 40 minutes straight, just on lateral oppression, just on internalized oppression or lateral violence, internalized denigration, because we're all, none of us is perfect. None of us know it all. We're all trying to shed these layers of programming that we grew up with. We didn't even know were being implanted into us. We're all experiencing that process together in real time. So I will move on from that. Let's go to line 3, because there is an update there and I want to send out to everybody a shout out to everybody who's ricing up there. Thank you all for sharing this stream. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for your comments, even if they're critical. You know what I mean? Like, I have to be challenged. I can't pretend like like everyone's agreeable with what I say, because I'm a human being and I'm trying to think my way through this too. Like, I'm trying to think of it when my children have questions or my peoples have questions about this or that. I have to think about it. I'm forced to think about it. And there's a lot going on in my life. Like, I just participated in a White House panel discussion having to do with Native American voting rights. And, I want to thank those people from Biden's team, from the Democratic establishment that is engaging in that kind of work. We didn't see any of that from the red team. And here comes, yes, every time I make a statement like that, these are two snakes or two heads of the same snake. You know what I mean? Yeah, I get that. But there is still work that is being done. There is still a political and economic reality that is being imposed. I'll give you that. I'm not trying to get away from that, actually. But I just find myself, I see the comments. I see those criticisms about, is it useful to be engaging in colonizer politics? Well, is it useful to change the blood quantum requirement, for instance? Anyhow, there's no aspect of our lives that is not political. But not only that, but I'm going to be on this American Constitution Society a look on Constitution Day, September 17th. I'll put a link up on this. That's why you got to follow me on the social medias, on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram. Follow Cut to the Chase, follow Chase Iron Eyes, Last Real Indians, and our flagship sponsor, La Kota La. We've also got Indigenous Peoples Movement. If you're not following them, they need, they're throwing down in New York City for Indigenous Peoples Day, which is, to my knowledge, October 12th. Could be October 11th. You're going to have to follow them. Indigenous Peoples Movement. But we certainly are supporting them. And we got, I'll be doing something a little different in preceding that in Niagara Falls. But I can't announce anything about that yet. But let me bring up this this word on Frank Bebo and the White Earth Tribal Court. There was this is Frank Bebo here that you see on the screen, and you've all heard about human beings granting personhood to the natural world, because that's just how our thinking operates in the English-speaking universe. It's very pretentious, very anthropocentric, but leave that behind for now. This is what it takes, is to give rivers and rice and sacred sites the rights of a person. And a person is a legal term. Corporations have recognized personhood now, which is completely ridiculous and asinine. But the White Earth Tribal Nation passed a law that recognizes the rights of wild rice. And Manuman is a word for this relative that came to the Anishinaabe people in a vision, in a dream, in a prophecy, came to the Anishinaabe people, and they were told to go west to the land where food grows on water. And so you're seeing here very good friends of ours that from the Big Sandy, it's called Big Sandy Lake on the map, but it's called Sandy Lake Tribal Nation. They are in a conundrum right now. They somehow had their recognition revoked, and you know, it's a crazy situation. But the Sandy Lake Tribal Nation, they are now unrecognized by the federal government, but they have, through the work of the Skinaway family and other families in and around the area, they have kept alive this tradition of ricing, of you're going out on a canoe, it's hard work all day long, you know, from the sun up. They're going through these waterways and these wetlands, and there's two people in a canoe in a boat. One of them is what's called poling, where they're pulling or pushing their way through these wetlands, and another is knocking the rice so as not to kill the rice, but just to knock the seed part or the nutritious part into the boat. And they this is how they live. This is how you can provide, you know, I always use the term spiritual economy, and people always razz me about that. But just like we had a spiritual, cosmological relationship with the buffalo, you know, the Anishinaabe people and the Dakota people that were kind of exiled from those homelands. I mean, yes, you know, the Anishinaabe and the Dakota clash, that was a very serious thing. But I mean, we've been living beside each other for a long time, and so we also exchanged medicine. We exchanged the big drum, and it was the Americans after the Dakota conflict that fully exiled us out of what is now called Minnesota. But this lawsuit, which was brought in tribal court, is suing the Minnesota Division of Natural Resources, or Department of Natural Resources. And it's claiming that obviously the Department of Natural Resources in this suit is in tribal court. It's much like the analysis that took place when the September 3rd, 2016 deadly dog attacks occurred at Standing Rock. There were other lawyers, friends of mine, who were contemplating bringing a similar action, which might still be possible, but it requires tribal councils who are willing to provide this legal protection for, you know, whether it's for wild rice or whether it's for, you know, protection from vicious dog attacks at the hands of private security. So this lawsuit is ongoing. The Department of Natural Resources would not comment on it. And we just found out about it, or I might have asked, you know, Frank or somebody else to come on and speak on it a bit. But I'd encourage you to look it up, check it out, because it presents something novel, you know, something that that could lead to, if it's not precedent in other courts of law, then it's certainly concepts that are creative, that kind of push the envelope of the box of what we think of as, you know, where Indians are supposed to exist, where indigenous nations are supposed to exist, or however you want to view that. Please go check him out. Frank Bebo, White Earth Tribal Nation. I'm not sure if, you know, and then while we're on line 3, again, we've got this, you know, go follow Camp McGeezy, follow Red Lake Treaty Camp, follow GNU Collective, follow Rise and Resist. You know, there's a host of people who are out there right now at camp, you know, surviving, probably coming home from, I saw something on Camp McGeezy, a live feed. That is, it's very important for us to be there for our relatives, even if we can't be there in person, to know them and to see them and to witness and participate in the creation of our legacies, because this is what's happening. There's very, you know, our very lives are at stake. And I know that we're in a global pandemic. I know that we are under attack in many different ways. So it's hard, you know, you got to think of your own. I mean, sanity is not the right word, but your own way of navigating, your own way of coping, your own way of seeking spiritual health, which is connected to your mental health and your physiological health and emotional health and so forth. You know, that's part of being in the fight, is recognizing that. So I want to say that about line 3 and remind people that is ongoing. Let's move on to the podcast called This Land. And again, the woman's who is behind this podcast, which is on Crooked Media. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you might have subscribed to Cut to the Chase. You can find This Land there. They are, one of their official sponsors is Reservation Dogs. You know, go watch that on Hulu if you have the time. It's legit, and I'm glad that things are happening as such. But on This Land podcast, Rebecca Nagel and Crooked Media do a deeper dive into the Indian Child Welfare Act. And if you did not know, that's what my appearance on the American Constitution Society's Friday webinar will feature, which is the lawsuit known as Brackeen. You know, it was versus, I think, Zinke. Brackeen versus the United States Department of Interior. And this is an attack on not only on ICWA, but on indigenous nationhood. There are the real rich, the think tanks, the law firms that you will find out when you go to This Land podcast. There are real enemies of indigenous nations, and they do not stop working. They have at their disposal everything that Wall Street has to offer, everything that big extraction, big oil, big mining, big pharmaceutical, everything too big to fail. And those inside the security state who succeeded in labeling somebody like me a terrorist at Standing Rock. It includes that group of people who weaponized and licensed and emboldened the racist radical fringe to spill blood in the U.S. Capitol. It includes the same people that used the terrorism enhancement against Jessica Reznicek. The same people who might try to use it against Ruby Montoya. There is a very real, very palpable war in our country, in the United States, also in Canada, New Zealand, Australia. There is a place of vulnerability, teachable moments, because of the global pandemic, because of the climate crisis, because of George Floyd, because of what happened at the United States Capitol, the attempted insurrection, the bloody riot that was instigated there. Should tell you, there are very real enemies of indigenous nations. And they are right now trying to undermine ICWA in a way so as to declare the Indian Child Welfare Act. Most of you know, if you have paid attention to this show, you know what the Indian Child Welfare Act is. That didn't come easy. That came because of struggle that happened here on Pine Ridge in the 70s. Go watch Incident at Oglala. Also around this whole country, consciousness was changing. Consciousness was uplifting. So these enemies of justice are trying to say that the Indian Child Welfare Act, which requires the protection of Indian identity, Native identity, indigenous identity, it requires children to be placed with Native kin, Native family, Native kin, or tribal specific kin, and then Native kin as a last resort. These lawyers are trying to say that this violates the Equal Protections Clause of the United States Constitution because it disfavors white people. So we've talked about it here on the show before, the fact that because white Americans are perceiving the changing demographics of this country, they're what they call political correctness or cancel culture, because they perceive those ideas to be a threat against who they are, against their privilege of power and their perch of power. They are doing everything they can in every kind of circle because they have these immeasurable resources. So they're trying to say that it violates the United States Constitution to allow tribal nations to intervene and violate the rights of, white Americans who are trying to adopt Native American children. And this would require a further dive into a suit, a case known as Morton versus Moncari, where the question of whether or not Native people, Indian people, Native American people, there's a whole code in the Code of Federal Regulations in the United States Code, Title 25, USC, 11, what is a tribal or Indian country? 1161, I believe. Anyway, I'm doing my best to try to forget all that stuff, but there is an entire code addressed at how Indians, the Indian identity, the Indian existence, the federal Indian identity and federal Indian existence are to be perceived and how they are to be treated in United States law. So they are hell-bent and dead set on eliminating our political distinction, our existence as political entities, sovereign entities, which the Supreme Court has recognized in Morton versus Moncari. It said, no, Indians are not a race of people. These are very important. Language, it runs the consciousness. So they're saying, they're debating, are Indians a race of Americans whose attainment and goal should be civil rights and equality with the European heteronormative patriarchic founders of this country? Or are they independent, distinct native nations? And they fall somewhere in the middle. The Supreme Court does. And so does Congress. Congress declaring that it has the plenary authority to tell Indians what to do, to tell Indians what to think. So that is at stake here. They are constantly trying to absorb us, trying to attack us on every little front. They're trying to get us to be a race of people whose ultimate attainment of justice and equality would be the attainment and protection of our civil rights. But, you know, this will never happen because of who we are and because our recognition of our authority and our power and the entities that granted us this responsibility and authority. The United States is just some foreigner that has enough people ascribing to their jive talk. You know, I shared a meme on my page just, I believe it was today, that the most dangerous weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So colonization is a state of mind. And these colonial forces and institutions are continuing this degradation, this ongoing genocide. There are systems of genocide in place to result in our extinction. So you would have to do your own deep dive. You would have to hope you caught another podcast like Cut to the Chase, where I try to, as you know, part of my duty, my karmic or dharmic path and duty, my way of giving back, part of my cosmologic responsibility is to try to build those bridges and create those links with like-spirited human beings. So I want to direct you to Rebecca Nagel's podcast, This Land. Can we throw that picture up there one more time? Because peoples, please go to this podcast. Each episode is maybe 30 minutes long. I believe she's in season 2. So you'll be able to get through it a lot quicker than you get through Cut to the Chase. Because every single time I want to quit on 60 minutes, but I don't know. I just can't, I guess. It's not in the cards for me. Am I a meme addict? We are also in a cultural meme warfare, and it impacts those how quickly information, symbols, art flows into the consciousness, and whether the artificial intelligence is able to, you know, attract you and cause you to start scrolling. You know what I mean? This is real. This is real talk. Like they're saying that the posture of the human being is changing because of the phone. So as much as I can, I try to. That's why you don't see me updating or as being as active on social media, is because I try to take an active effort to you know, make Mother Nature my homepage, sort of thing, which is very easy to do in ceremonial season. It's very easy to do. And I saw Brother Bear Cross log on a bit earlier. Brothers and teachers, gurus, mentors, intercessors, interpreters of the sacred, shaman, whatever you want to call the men and women who have certain duties to carry out because of their dreams their visions or things that they've seen, not dreams like when you go to sleep and you dream, but what happens to you in the perceived corporal reality, the perceived quantum field, or however you want to view that. I don't like to view the sacred through those scientific terms anymore. I just, I that's what they teach us in college and so forth, and it's bullocks, my friends. Do your best to follow your spiritual path, whatever that means for you. And guys like Bear Cross, Warfield Moose, there's a page called Mita Oyate. You should go check out Warfield Moose, the material that Warfield Moose has out, because I have real teachers, and including Vishva G. He's my guru. So are these interpreters of the sacred. And these people are younger than me. So, I say this because I know that we are all inside this very vulnerable place right now. Life is not like quote unquote normal as it was before the pandemic, where people were just kind of in a stupor, a consumer stupor. You know what I'm saying? And we ain't going back to that. There's no going back to that. And so we've got to open ourselves up and seek these different directions. That's our responsibility as human beings to do that. We'll get a link up here to Vishva G too. I can't remember how to pronounce this certain type of yoga that Vishva practices, but I appreciate everybody, at any level. It's, there's a certain part of the human spirit that doesn't want to oh, this guy's my guru, or this guy's my medicine man. We joke around about that, but we need teachers throughout time, throughout millennia, throughout eons. We respected those who experienced more than we did, who were here longer than we were, and by that virtue should have learned more than we know at that time. So I respect people who are on that path, and I always want to give them a shout out. So, and there's many more. I can't give everyone a shout out. I just shouting out the people that I actually know in person, more than social media. So let me gavel out of that and move on to concluding the show. I cannot believe that we are over an hour. I do appreciate you all saying, keep going. It's all right. You got the time for this. You're here for this. I do want to try to make these things, as concise as possible. But I also recognize that, maybe you have time to listen to the podcast, or maybe you're here and you're giving your energy to it, even though it's through the digital world. You're somewhere on this planet, and we're thinking about the same things at the same time, and we're able to connect on that level. So I do appreciate your time here. I appreciate you every single day making that choice to show up, making that choice to, I don't even want to call it being positive, just being critical, being truthful, trying to find the path of your own healing, your own liberation. What does that mean to you? What does that mean in your life, in your world? That's what I want to see. I want to see everybody strengthening themselves in what I see as divine inspiration. And I know that I use a lot of these terms that you might think are religious terms, but it's just because I also speak the English language And I'm trying to make those connections based on those available terms. So I don't mean anything by it. I'm just putting something out there that you might be able to relate to. Let me close with something very serious. Almost everything we cover is something very serious. But that is the 20th memorial of September 11th, 2001. And I remember exactly that day on the Standing Rock Nation. That's where I was. But we, you know, again, there's a lot of Native people who are veterans who have signed up to join the United States military, United States Armed Forces. There's a lot of people who, you know, might not want to be critical of why we go to war, why war exists, who might not, you know, who might want to believe that we're going into the Middle East and killing 1 million people to defend freedom, because that appeals to, you know, the inclination of our heroic psyche, our glorious pursuits, and for Native people, the ability to demonstrate bravery. You know, we want to believe that we're defending freedom, but we're not defending freedom. I think most vets, not most vets that I know, my brother, one of my best friends, my relatives, people who fought in wars, particularly the war on terror and what preceded the war on terror, when we went over to Iraq, you know, Operation Desert Storm, and I forget, there was another operation during Desert Storm. This is the one that my brother went on. And then there was Operation Iraqi Freedom. But 9/11, Control, do we have that graphic of the 9/11? It says, you know, they tell us to never forget that 3,000 people were killed on 9/11. And we don't forget that, nor do we make light of that, nor do I try to weaponize that. But I respect people's creative authority in juxtaposing that and saying, look, America, you tell us to forget about it, to get over it, to heal from it, to move on. It's in the past. But when it's, quote unquote, you know, the shoes on the other foot, and not a word is said about the more than 1 million people in the Middle East, in Iraq, Afghanistan, probably other places where people have died, where innocent lives, just like those at 9/11, those at the Twin Towers, at the World Trade Center, perished needlessly, just like in Chile, just like in every single coup we, the United States, instigated in every place around the country, like in Venezuela or in Bolivia or anywhere. Usually where indigenous resources, and they're all indigenous resources, we are not allowed to be critical of that. Even inside indigenous country, if we come out saying, look, we know as a country, not me, as I'm not a veteran, we as a country, we're not fighting to defend any kind of freedom. Why are you over across the seas defending my freedoms? When Enbridge and Energy Transfer Partners and Tiger Swan are right here on this soil, terrorizing me, terrorizing my children. You know, as a man, I choose who my enemy is. Dick Cheney and George Bush are not going to tell me who my enemy is. I am not going to die. I'm not going to fly 2,000 miles to die for Dick Cheney's profits. I choose who my enemy is, and I know who my enemy is. And it's not the people that the rich, racist ruling class is telling us are our enemies. Those are not our enemies. So when we talk about 9/11, when this country asks us to grieve with them and to empathize with them, that is a two-way street. And we are in a time of truth-telling where everybody in this country, and certainly in the indigenous world, is compelled, is authorized, is ready to not only speak on it, but to act on it. The Muslim community that you, Dick Cheney, told me was the terrorists, they're not the terrorists. You, Halliburton, Energy Transfer Partners, Enbridge, the private military contractors who are putting us in prison, who are trying to dictate to every state legislature, and 37 of them have gone along with you in declaring that any water protector or anybody who tries to protect and defend our constitutional rights to peaceably assemble, to express ourselves, that we're the terrorists, that your private oil infrastructure is a matter of national security, and that anybody who wants clean water and clean air and healthy ecosystems deserves to sit in prison. We can't allow that to happen on our watch. And I recognize that soldiers don't have a choice. I am not a soldier. Nobody is going to tell me who my enemy is. That's a choice that just me personally, individually, that I make. Anybody who signs up for the United States military, I recognize that you don't have a choice. Your only choices are the choices that we get when the corporate extractive industry shows up on our doorstep and holds a gun to our heads and says, we're going to violate your treaty and we're going to poison your water. We also don't have a choice. The only choice we got there is death or prison. So when it comes to defending our rights, those are the kind of choices that we're driven to. And I know that that's why. Anyway, this is going to get longer. It's going to go into something longer if I go there. But this is why Standing Rock happened the way it did, because the United States knows that most of its military is us. Most of its military is not these racist, radical fringe troglodytes that follow Trump and take ivermectin. Most of the people in the military are working class people, the same people like the coal miners, the same people who have been oppressed racially as well. And they know that the social contract is being renegotiated in real time. And they also know that they've already lost. We've already crossed that threshold all over this country. They try to make their move. Like, if you're paying attention, you already know that this what they call, there's a civil war coming. It's already here. It's already popped off. But sometimes it's undeclared. So those who are loyal to the soil, loyal to the waters, to what is sacred about these lands, these waters, and our way of life here, our ability to survive here. I believe there's enough people who will get to that point. You know, we don't have to go to war. We just like we don't have to go to work for the corporatists, like what you're seeing after COVID or during COVID. Everybody's complaining about a work shortage. Well, yeah, nobody's gonna go risk their life for $9 an hour, man. You know what I mean? You start paying people $20 an hour minimum, then all of a sudden there's no labor shortage. So, look, I respect the bravery of soldiers. I mean, all my family is soldiers. I'm just saying that Dick Cheney is not going to tell me when and where I got to go fight. That is a decision that I'm going to make. Dick Cheney is not going to tell me who my enemy is. I will define that as a man, as an indigenous person who is threatening my livelihood, who is threatening my safety, who's threatening my peace of mind. We know who these people are. We know what they're capable of. We know what they've done. They put people in prison. They put Leonard Peltier in prison. And we're still calling for his freedom. So on 20th anniversary, 20th memorial of 9/11, of course we grieve. We know what grief is about. We know what it's like to have massacres upon massacres, to have mass child graves be unearthed time after time after time, and the world is somehow silent. People just move on. People just forget. So to have America tell us to never forget, it comes loaded up, and we have to express ourselves. We have to tell it like it is. So that's what we try to do here. And I'm open to criticism. I'm open to, you know, people who think differently. But what I'm not open to is letting people define the contours of my existence. People who are oppressive, people who are bad men among the human family. I can't allow that. And so, you know, every single time they come at us, they encroach upon us. Look at Pine Ridge. When Governor Nome threatened here, that's how I know that, you know what? I'm critical of the people who send us to war. I'm not critical of the individual soldier. My brother and sister in struggle, in class struggle. You know, you might be missing the point if you think I'm criticizing the soldier. I'm criticizing the people who are sending us there. They're only sending us to go die for their profit. They're not sending their sons. They're not sending their daughters. I mean, you might have a prince or two, you know, make some sort of superficial appearance on the battlefield, like in the instance of the UK or whatever. But they've been running game on us for a long time. And we're waking up. And I'm very fortunate to be able to speak these truths. I know who we're standing up against, and I don't know any other way. So I want to thank you for listening, for indulging, you know, me covering these topics for you tonight. Something to think about, something to ponder. And, you know, I look forward to doing it again back in the studio before too long, but our work life is moving very quickly. So you're just going to have to bear with us. And you know, hopefully the audio isn't too much different. And so anyway, thank you for sharing this stream. Thank you for subscribing to the podcast. All the financial subscribers, again, you can get secret little treats if you do some financial subscription. $5 a month will get you some merch, at least a jacket. We're working on some shirts. We got some things in the works. I want to thank our sponsors. That is Lakota Law at Lakota Law, Lakota People's Law Project, a division of the Romero Institute, Indigenous Peoples Movement. Again, please follow them. Check out what they're going to be doing on, I forget the name of the island out in New York there, but Indigenous Peoples Day. Brother Cliff Matthias. Check out, just find them on Instagram before I try to remember what's going on out there. I just know it's going down, and it's always powerful. It's always good. There's 24 hours of ceremony. Thank you to Last Real Indians. Thank you to everybody who's watching, everybody who tunes in. Thank you for spending this evening with us, and thank you for your comments. I didn't mean to, cut anybody the wrong way or try to step on toes, but we also are better for being openly and honestly critical of the issues that face us. That's going to get us much, much further. So again, thank you for listening. Lila Wopila Tanka Ichichapelo. This has been Cut to the Chase number 29. I'm pleased to say, and we're looking forward to more. But for now, we are out.